Hello Grebos and welcome back to Downloadable Content. And hey, if you just found the channel, thank you so much for stopping by, and I have some exciting news to share with you today. We are going to be doing a first look and review for Blade and Sorcery Nomad for the standalone Quest version. All the gameplay you're about to see is completely recorded with the standalone Quest 2. However, this weird intro part I am recording in the PC VR version of the game. If you've just bought the game or are thinking about it, sit back, relax, and I'll show you some gameplay and give you an overall review of what I thought Blade and Sorcery Nomad was all about. Being someone that plays Blade and Sorcery on the PC VR, it was a little tough to jump into the Quest 2 version. Right out of the gate, there was a visual difference, but I put all of that aside and tried my best to go in there without any preconceived notions. The first thing I did was open the book and see what options I had available on the standalone, and I was impressed to see what I can change, turn off, and enable. And yes, all the cheats are there for the book as well. So if you wanted to just jump into the sandbox mode and still be a god, well, that option is still there for you. You can mess around with the physics and even change the enemy spawning. So if you want to attack only men or only females, the option is there to do so. Then I took a look at the item book to see what I had in there, and thank goodness all of the weapons were there. We had even the new ones for U10. We have the big blunt stick where you can just smash someone, and that one feels so good. The swords are there, the daggers were there, so I was happy to see everything was there, including those potions. So the first thing I had to do was jump into a sandbox arena level and just test out the gameplay. And yes, spawning into the arena, I mean, especially in U10, it looks awesome. However, on the Quest, the resolution is a little bit different. So especially when I got up really close to textures, you know, there was no normal mapping. Things seemed a little bit flat, but the performance overall was still great. But I knew it was going to take an impact in resolution and textures, but I digress. Let's get past the visual differences in the graphics for right now and focus on the gameplay, because hell, it's still Blade and Sorcery and it felt good. Having no wires attached to me, oh my goodness, was such a great feeling. I played this in my normal recording space, but I also took it to another separate part of my house just to kind of see what the gameplay was like. And yeah, it's Blade and Sorcery with no wires. What else could you want? The weapons felt good, slow motion felt good, movement felt good, and even the spells felt good. It just was awesome just to be completely free in Blade and Sorcery. And of course, one of the first things I had to do was, well, a stress test. Let's go right into the book, and we spawned, well, the Bandit versus Knights, and I wanted to see how many they would give us. And in the sandbox mode, it seemed like it tried to limit the number of NPCs on screen to 3, sometimes 4, but it counted me as being there, obviously. And although it was seemingly a stress test, there wasn't that many NPCs at once. I think that's just because it's trying to protect their performance and they don't want that many physics objects that are constantly moving and updating at the same time, but it was noticeable that there was definitely less NPCs on screen. I didn't expect it to only be 3 though, to be honest with you. Once I had my fill of the sandbox mode and tested the parameters of Blade and Sorcery Nomad, I knew I had to return home and do a U10 dungeon. I maxed out the difficulty and the length, and I dove right in. A big thing I noticed was the overall load times. Now, this is a Quest 2 running completely vanilla stuff, and nothing was updated. Hell, I even left things like textures on weapons and blood decals turned off by default because that's what's recommended. And unfortunately, the load time to get into a dungeon was longer than expected. So I just kind of, stood there. I think overall the longest I waited was about 30, sometimes 45 seconds for a dungeon to load. But once that dungeon did load, however, I really didn't have any stuttering or any weird frame drops that I can really complain about while going on as the levels changed from instance to instance and seed to seed while I walked and played through the dungeon. So I guess that one longer loading screen honestly was worth it because the actual gameplay doesn't suffer, and that's probably the most important part. As I moved about the dungeon and tested out what was possible, there was only one time during my couple of playthroughs that the game gave me a hard crash. And that's when I imbued a torch with fire and hit an enemy with it. I just got black screen and the app quit. Aside from that, no major problems that I can write home about. However, there was this one time that I got a visual glitch where I was walking through a certain part of a dungeon. The floor was like transparent. I don't know. The rocks were still there, but the floor just looked like it was made of metal. I think water was supposed to be there, but I didn't see any water. And it looked weird the entire time until I got out of that room. But once I got out of the room, it was smooth sailing. The overall gameplay is still excellent. It's Blade and Sorcery as we know it. And yes, the resolution has definitely been turned down from the Quest 2 side of things, but the gameplay felt awesome. Stealth kills in the dungeon felt so cool. Of course, you know, we had to do the obligatory Assassin's Creed jump from the air and execute someone. So that felt incredible with no wires. And the climbing itself still feels like Blade and Sorcery. Normal jankiness, but it's all still there. You can climb on pretty much whatever you want, and well, the rest is up to you. It's a creative game as you play through it. Do it as a Altair assassin guy, or do it at brute force. Just run through there God of War style, chopping things up. And like I said, because you're not bound by the wire, combat feels almost like unlimited potential. I was twirling around doing some, Witcher moves, and, I was able to do things that I really couldn't do when I was attached to a wire. So honestly, even if you play the game on PC VR because, well, it's kind of just superior, using the Quest 2 and having no wires feels a little different because you are not restricted during your combat. Unless, of course, you're using Airlink, but that's a different story. I definitely used some spells inside the dungeon, and the visual effects were definitely, well, let's just say different, but they were there. And I think if I hadn't played Blade and Sorcery on the PC first, the Quest 2 would still look awesome. I mean, it still honestly looks pretty cool and awesome, but I know the difference because, well, this is what it looks like on the PC version. See, that's what the fireball is supposed to look like, but I digress. Overall, I was very satisfied playing Blade and Sorcery Nomad. The vanilla version runs very well. Yes, there is a longer load screen in between dungeons, but once you get up and running, you won't notice that during your normal playthrough. The game has been very well optimized to also play in the Oculus Quest as long as you do what's recommended. I unfortunately will say don't try to turn on things like blood decals on the player model or even on the enemy models, and don't turn the blood painted textures on the weapons just yet. I tried it a couple times and I definitely got some frame drops, which was a little unfortunate, but it wasn't anything that was like too drastic or too dastardly. So if you want to put it on, that's up to you, but just know that you will kind of get some performance wonkiness. The big topic is mods, right? I know a lot of people are asking, will mods be supported? And the answer is yes for the Oculus Quest 2. However, you're probably going to need a PC to install them. There were no mods available for the Nomad version during my playthrough, so I played it as vanilla. So I cannot tell you about mods right now, but stay tuned because soon I'll be able to tell you. So overall, my experience with Blade and Sorcery Nomad, I would say that I strongly recommend getting it, even if you already own the game on PC VR and have a Quest 2. This is great to just play out in the world. I know people keep talking about sunlight and stuff, and I'm not going to get into that, but play the game where you want to play it, and that's the most important part. The holidays are coming up, and well, you're about to go to some boring family events. Why not bring your headset with you and become a god at Thanksgiving? So if you haven't downloaded it already, go do so now. Well, Greebos, that is it for today's video. We took a first look and review for Blade and Sorcery Nomad. And hey, if you're new to downloadable content, why not consider subscribing? It's free. All you have to do is just go click that button down below and join up. And if you haven't met me yet, I'm Drifter/Rob from Downloadable Content. I will be your guide to installing mods and showcasing mod reviews for Blade and Sorcery Nomad. So don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for stopping by, and other than that, I will see you in the next video.